and welcome to GameStack. We are finally talking about kart racers.
Leave it to Nintendo to invent a genre that everybody loves.
Yeah, well, it's a good genre. I have to admit.
Yes.
And but what? But what?
But sadly, some companies just couldn't, make good games.
It's true. Anyway, let's just get started with the people who started it all.
Let's start out with the obvious, which of course is Mario Kart. This is definitely the best kart racing series out there, and each of the 9 games in the series has its own strengths and weaknesses. But make no mistake, each one of these games is solid and you're in for a good time with any one of them. Nintendo started a new genre of racing with Mario Kart. It was fun and very successful. The goal of each game is identical, as you must do whatever is needed to finish in first place. As you race and power slide your way around corners, you can pick up weapons that will slow other racers down. But of course, you're vulnerable to these weapons as well, so watch out. Anyway, it all began with Super Mario Kart on the Super Nintendo. It's an amazing game that supports not just one, but all the way up to 2 different players. Single player is great, and you won't even notice that you're only watching half the screen. The other half has a nice view of the map and character locations while racing. And if enemies are close enough to you, it goes to a rear view mirror type screen. 2-player racing is cool, but 2-player battle mode is really fun with great courses and non-stop action. If I had to pick a favorite track, it would easily be Rainbow Road. Mario Kart 64 moved the game to a 3D world, and at the time it looked great. Hell, it still looks good. Now you can race and battle with up to 4 friends. I've had countless fun nights of battle mode with friends, and this game has the best battle mode in the series. The game also introduced the dreaded blue shell, which has become a thorn in the side of racers who are always in first place. My favorite course is, again, Rainbow Road, as it has a great song and I love the neon light figures in the background. Then came Mario Kart Super Circuit on the Game Boy Advance. This is one of my favorite in the series. It's a more difficult game as power slides are harder to pull off, but once you get it down, you'll love it. The tracks in the game are more unique than any of the others. Some of them will change from day to night, which is awesome. I really like that. Probably the coolest feature is that all of the tracks from the original game are here and all you have to do is unlock them. My favorite track for this game is Broken Pier. I love the evil mountain faces, they're just so evil. Mario Kart Double Dash was next and released on the GameCube. A lot more characters are playable, and the biggest changes you can see is that each kart has 2 players that you can switch between at any time. The game looks great on the GameCube, but I feel a lot of the tracks are just lacking and kind of boring. This goes for battle mode as well. I just never felt the same intensity. Even the soundtrack seems kind of weak. But it's not all bad, and Bowser's Castle is a great track and easily my favorite in this entry. Then came Mario Kart DS, and this is an outstanding game. This one is loaded with 16 new and 16 tracks from previous games. This was also a great online game until people figured out how to snake, and then online was ruined. Offline though, it's great, and if I had to pick a favorite course, it would be Waluigi Pinball. After that came Mario Kart Wii, and as you can easily guess, this included motion controls. Steering with the Wii remote works well, but I really still prefer the plain old traditional controls. A little bit of waggle is needed if you want to speed boost off of jumps. You've got to shake your controller at the right time. Also introduced to this game were motorcycles. These controlled really well and you could do a wheelie for a little extra speed. This game supported a great online experience and had some really fun courses and a great soundtrack. But sadly, online is no longer available, so you can just forget that option. Wario's Minecart is my favorite track in this game. Mario Kart 7 on the 3DS is the weakest in my opinion. It introduced hang gliders and underwater racing. In my opinion, the underwater racing really slowed the game down. So let's move on to Mario Kart 8. This game introduced anti-gravity racing, which is cool. The problem is that I don't feel the effects like I think Nintendo wants me to. Sadly, underwater racing and hang gliders are still here, but they don't seem to be as slow as they were in Part 7. Thank God. This game is gorgeous to look at, and each track has a ton of detail and just feels huge. I feel that Nintendo is really doing it right with the DLC, as we've gotten 2 great packs with new characters and tons of new tracks which are really fun. Racing Online is still weak in terms of player matching, and maybe someday they'll realize this and make it easier to meet up with friends. But overall, this is a great entry, and again, Bowser's Castle is my favorite track. There were also some Mario Kart GP games released in the arcades. These ran on the Triforce arcade hardware, which is based on the GameCube. These were developed by Namco, but I've only seen one machine in my life. Of course, you can play as some of their characters like Pac-Man. These were pretty fun, but you can kind of tell that they weren't programmed by Nintendo themselves. I'd love to see these come home someday so I can play them without having to soft mod my Wii, which I really don't want to do. Anyway, thanks Nintendo for a wonderful set of kart racers, and I hope the series stays strong in future releases.
Here's ModNation Racers for the PSP. It's also on the PlayStation 3. So why in the hell would I go and get the inferior PSP version? Well, because it was offered for free by Sony in the great identity theft crisis of 2011. The few games that they gave away for free made me totally forgive Sony and forget about the whole thing. I love you, Sony. You can do no wrong. Anyway, this is actually only the second time that I've bothered to play this. As you can guess, it didn't impress me much the first time. But you know what? It's definitely better than I originally gave it credit for. The career mode is where to go for sure. It lets you know the ins and outs of all the racing techniques. As the name implies, the basic premise behind this one is the ability to create and mod not only different karts, but also players and tracks. This is pretty cool. During the career mode, you'll get an FMV cutscene between each race. Yep, this one actually has a bit of a story. The racing action is fairly smooth. I didn't have any issues with the controls after playing a few rounds, and the tracks are designed pretty well. I initially thought it was kind of weird using the shoulder buttons as the gas and brakes since they're not analog, but it actually works out nicely. The face buttons have all of your other functions like drifting, weapon firing, and boost. You build your boost meter by doing fat, sick moves at every opportunity. I like this aspect as it really makes me want to do things to fill that meter up instead of just getting a small boost here and there like in a lot of other kart racers. The weapons are all fine, nothing exceptional here. You also have a shield button which can shield you from attacks for a short time. Unfortunately, there's not a whole lot of variety visually, but things look pretty good for the PSP. At first, the announcer seems like the normal antagonistic pit crew chief, but he's actually kind of funny and he grew on me.
You got an in-flight movie up there?
You can even take the game online or do local multiplayer with ad hoc. I've never gotten ad hoc anything to work before, and I've honestly never even heard of that term before the PSP. Going online, there were no games to join, so I created my own room and waited, and nobody ever came. It'd be really cool if I could cross-play against players running the game on their PS3. Overall, it's a fun little game, but I'm sure the PS3 version is better for obvious reasons. And if I run across it for cheap, I am definitely going to pick it up.
You can't afford to slow down. Stay on course. First, huh? Probably the last time that'll happen. You can boost any day now, Sparkles.
This is South Park Rally for the Nintendo 64. This is the first time I've played this game ever, and the last. Even before turning on the power, I had a feeling I knew exactly what I was going to see and hear. I thought I was going to play a low-budget racer with tons upon tons of one-liners from the show, and I was pretty much right on, but there was one thing that happened here that I didn't expect. I was expecting this to be a traditional racing game where you do laps around a track and the first one across the finish line wins. This game is anything but that. The first race is kind of that, as you need to race through 4 checkpoints which completes 1 lap. Do this 3 times and win. Everything else that I played was basically a game of keep away. Like this race here where everyone has mad cow disease and you need to hold on to the antidote until your percentage reaches 0. To get the antidote from another player, you need to bump into them or use one of the game's weapons, which are mostly useless. It's so boring and everyone just piles up on each other. Once you do get the antidote, you just need to run away and wait it out, which seems to take forever. The game controls okay, but the lack of a good power slide system makes cornering really tough. There is some music here, but it's nothing that anyone would ever remember. And of course, the game is loaded with one-liners from each character, and yes, they do get old before the race is over. I checked the options menu, and there's no way of turning the voices off. If you were super bored and had nothing else to play, I would just say to watch TV and have a better time. If somebody gave you this game and $20, I would still recommend you just pass on it.
Where's the siren button? Isn't it standard issue? Oh!
Pac-Man World Rally on the PlayStation 2 by Namco is surprisingly good. I rarely ever hear anyone mention this one, so it's easy to overlook mainly because most people don't care about Pac-Man anymore. But they did a really good job here. You can pick from several different characters in the Pac-Man universe with their respective karts and attributes. The racing action controls super well. Drifting is easy as it is in Mario Kart with a tap of a shoulder button. The boxes contain items, of course, and these are all your standard fare. It's really fun sometimes though, as the battles can get crazy and chaotic. There's also dots on the screen that you can munch. These, along with your power slides, fill up a meter at the bottom of the screen. Eventually you'll be able to turn into a giant-ass Pac-Man and munch other racers. But be careful, because the other racers can do this as well, and if they do, you'll turn into a blue ghost and you'll be the one that's hunted. There's also fruit scattered around a track which can open up shortcuts. And lastly, there's a shield that you can activate sometimes which will protect you from attacks, temporarily anyway. All this, and you've got 4-player capability as well. The tracks are all designed really nicely, and new cups are unlocked once you win your current cup. The tracks all really stand out from one another, and you can play the game in 480p and widescreen even on the PS2. The music is also surprisingly good, and they all have familiar Pac-Man motifs in them. I was really surprised at how much they were able to squeeze out of the basic Pac-Man and Miss Pac-Man themes. A lot of different musicians contributed to this one, including Tommy Tallarico and the Weasel Zappa? Yep. This is a great alternative to Mario Kart, and it really holds its own. It's also on the Xbox, GameCube, PSP, and PC, so if you see it, you really should pick it up. Another great alternative to Mario Kart is Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing. Yeah, I know, Dave talked about this one not too long ago, but we just can't leave it out of a proper kart racing episode. I'll try to be fairly quick about this and show different tracks than he did, I promise. Anyway, I feel that this one not only rivals any Mario Kart game, but surpasses it. The control is perfect. It's very similar to Pac-Man World Rally in the way it controls, but the drifting and power sliding is every bit as intuitive as, say, Outrun 2. The weapons are all very unique and fun, and there's even one that flips you upside down. It's crazy. The tracks are all amazing, and this game has a ton of different modes. You can also engage the All-Star mode during a race where you become invincible for a brief time and start going super fast. As of this recording, this is my favorite kart racing game ever made. There's also a kick-ass sequel called Sonic and All-Stars Racing Transformed. This is pretty much more of the same, except now your vehicle auto-transforms since each track can have land, sea, and air segments. Now this is pretty cool, but it's not something that I feel was desperately needed. But it's certainly nothing to complain about. Anyway, this game is insanely awesome, but not quite as good as Part 1 in my opinion. Then again, I am playing the Wii U version, and everyone says that I should feel ashamed for even owning this one. Even Dave sold his Wii U version to get it on the PS3. Well, screw you guys, I'm gonna stick with the Wii U version. This version also has a 5-person multiplayer with one person using the Wii U gamepad. It's a fantastic game, and the graphics and music are both amazing, just like they were in the first game. I'd recommend this game to anybody in a heartbeat. One can only hope for a third installment in the series on a console, but knowing Sega these days, it'll probably only be on mobile.
Diddy Kong Racing on the N64 by Rare took kart racing and added some new features to keep the genre from going stale, and it worked. Yes, Joe did talk about this game on the N64 episode, but it's high time I give my thoughts on this little gem. So like a lot of Rare games, this one has a core area where you can mess around and find new worlds to explore. Pick a character from the Rare universe and off you go. I picked Conker hoping he'd be a foul-mouth, but sadly he wasn't, so I was a little disappointed with that. But we've all got to remember that this came out a long time before Bad Fur Day. To open areas and races, you need a certain amount of balloons. The number required is plastered on every door. Once you find a race to enter, the vehicle for that race is chosen for you. Karts are what you'll race with the most, but there are some races with airplanes and hovercraft. They all control really well for the most part, but the hovercraft will take a bit longer to get used to. Racing is easy, and so is the enemy AI. That's good because to earn more balloons, you must finish a race in first place. Even if you get second place, it's the same as finishing last, and you'll have to try again as it's first or nothing. There's 3 areas that you must tackle first. Each area has 4 races, and once you get a balloon for each race, then you go up against a boss character. Luckily, these are easy races, and you'll beat them in no time. Once a boss is defeated, the game gets a little bit tougher as you must race each course again, but this time around you have to collect 8 silver coins and finish in first place. Do this, and you must race against the boss one more time. These races are tougher as there are more obstacles to avoid this time around, and the boss is slightly faster. Once you get past him, he'll give you a piece of an amulet. I really like the graphics in this game as they're all very colorful. There's little to no slowdown and no fog unless it's meant to be there. The music is pretty strange. It's fine for the game, but I don't care for the instruments they are trying to synthesize. However, I do like the music in the Frozen Snowy worlds as they were able to mix in Christmas Carol melodies. That's a nice touch. Multiplayer can be pretty fun and it just adds to the overall package. This is a great game, and if you haven't played it, then play it!
Alright, Dave, so you think Mario Kart is better than the Sonic Kart Racers?
As a whole, for a series, yes I do. But if you're comparing Sega and Sonic versus Mario Kart 8, I like Sega and Sonic better than Mario Kart 8. But as a whole series, I think Mario Kart is better.
Okay, cool. I'll accept that for now.
For now, okay.
Okay, let's get back into it. LittleBigPlanet Karting is an interesting take on the genre. I'm a moderate fan of the main series and Dave recommended this one to me. Fortunately, it was only $20 brand new at the time. And like ModNation Racers, this is only the second time I've gotten around to playing it. Oh good, it only needs to download and install 14 updates! Anyway, the gameplay is pretty smooth, but oh man, the weapons will kill you. You often see a missile come up from behind and hover around you for a while, and there doesn't seem to be anything you can do about it. This happened to me quite a bit. Like regular ass LittleBigPlanet, you collect lots of bubbles, stickers, and prizes. You have your typical drifting and whatnot, but this game also lets you latch on to things. This can be useful for grabbing extra bubbles and stuff. The control generally feels pretty smooth, and overall the racing is decently enjoyable. Not all the levels are races though. Some are battles where you need to hurt more enemies than anyone else. Or this one where you're just putzing around alone against the clock. I've never been a really big fan of the discombobulated way that the levels in the Big Planet universe are laid out. It looks messy and it just kind of makes me not want to bother. I know that's just me, but hey, I've got to say what I feel. The graphics are pretty good. They feature a slightly shallow depth of field and some nice colors. The soundtrack is mostly random licensed stuff that you'd expect from the series. But the main attraction here is that you can create and upload your own levels as well as play other people's levels. For example, this guy created the Move Farm track from Mario Kart 64. It's pretty damned impressive how close he is able to get everything to look. Or how about this one, which is from the Sonic universe? They somehow even managed to get Sonic himself in there. These guys are amazing and it's really fun to play other people's tracks. The tools used to create the tracks are really good. I'm just surprised that Sony allows some of these to stay up on their servers. In order to play these tracks, you need to punch in an access code that comes with the game. That means you're out of luck if you buy the game used and somebody already punched in the code on their system. Sony loves you. Overall, this is a good game, but nothing mind-blowing outside of the custom tracks, which are really, really cool.
Let's take a look at Mickey's Speedway USA on the N64. Developed by Rare, this game takes you around the USA and lets you race in some of the major cities and states across this great country. Have you ever wondered what it would be like to race in Los Angeles? Well, you can do that here, and you can do it with a nice assortment of characters from the Mickey Mouse universe. It's a cool idea, but sadly it's just a boring game with an exceptionally bad soundtrack. I really like the graphics, even though a lot of the locations didn't remind me of what they were supposed to be. Would it have been that difficult to throw in the Liberty Bell in Philadelphia, or the stairs that Rocky climbed? Or maybe a Philly cheesesteak sitting on the ground or something? Any of these would have been a better choice than a shipping yard. That's not what comes to mind when I think of Philly. The game controls really well, but you'll need to be perfect because the AI is really good. There's no rubber banding in this game, so you must win on your own pure skill. You can power slide around corners, but you don't get a speed boost, so just forget about that as you'll fall behind really fast. Your best bet is to just try and make straight lines and cut and hop around as many corners as possible, as that seems like the best way to win. Just like any kart racer out there, this game has a bunch of weapons that you can use. Most of them are worthless though. Even the ones that home in on your opponents suck as they seem to run into walls a lot. The multiplayer battle mode is okay, but you'd be better off with a Mario Kart game. I really had high hopes for this game being from Rare and all, but it's just an average game at best. They also released a version on the Game Boy Color with the same title. This is an interesting game that plays similar to games like RC Pro-Am. It feels and looks very basic, but it was fun to play in short spurts.
Square got into the kart racing craze with Chocobo Racing on the original PlayStation. Here you can race as a few of the creatures common to many of the Final Fantasy games. It works mostly like you'd expect it to, with some minor exceptions. The items here are called stones, and you can tow up to 3 stones at a time and even steal them from your enemies. If you collect more than one of the same stone, the power of it can be increased. You also have a magic ability which you can choose at the start of the game. When the meter at the top fills up, you can unleash it to move faster, fly over bad spots, or temporarily improve the handling of your kart. Once you've used it, the meter will start refilling automatically. Unfortunately, the track design isn't that great. There's lots of really tight corners on many of the courses. You can skid as the game calls it, and this helps, but it's still pretty annoying. Also, if you don't like rubber banding in your racing, then this is the game for you. Once you get behind, you stay behind pretty much for good. Same thing if you get ahead. There's not much in the way of multiplayer options other than head-to-head racing, but there is a story mode. It's very simplistic, but it does add some interest to an otherwise disposable game. Basically, this is just your middle-of-the-road average kart racer. Hudson Soft also tried cashing in with Bomberman Kart on the PlayStation 2. This was released only in Japan and Europe. You choose from several different Bombermen, including Bomber Woman and a Bomber Baby. You also get to pick from a few different karts, but they don't show any of their attributes if they even have any. The racing is pretty standard fare. Pick up items and use them. The items in this one are all pretty lacking though. There's one that makes you untouchable for a short time, but that's really as good as it gets. And this is one of the few games on the PS2 that relies on the pressure-sensitive face buttons on the controller. Man, this sucks. You've got to press down really hard to go full throttle. Thankfully, there's a gauge at the bottom left of the screen so you know exactly how much you need to press. But your thumb's definitely going to hurt after a few races for sure. The drifting mechanics aren't very good. Something starts to build up as I drift, but I've never been able to take advantage of whatever may happen since it's tough to stay in your drift. The graphics are simplistic and colorful, and the music could almost pass for a real Mario Kart game. There's lots of multiplayer modes and minigames to choose from, so these will keep you busy for a little while anyway. You can even play a standard game of Bomberman, which is probably the best thing about the game. Overall, I'd say that nobody in the US should feel bad about missing out on this one.
Konami's Crazy Racer was a launch game for the Game Boy Advance in Japan, and it came out 3 months prior to Mario Kart. Konami did a great job with this game in all aspects. Firstly, you can choose from one of 8 characters from the Konami universe. A lot of cool characters are here, like the ninja from Metal Gear and Goemon from the, Goemon series? One character that I wish was different is Dracula from Castlevania. Firstly, he looks nothing like Dracula that I'm used to seeing, but looks like an old fat blue man. A Belmont would have been a better and more logical choice, but no, we get Fat Dracula instead. Since you have racers from different franchises, it only makes sense that you have tracks from those franchises as well. All of them are fun to race on and slightly feel like the series they are drawn from, but the only way to really tell what track you're on is by the music. I like all the music here, but I would have never have guessed that this stage was from Metal Gear if it wasn't for the music in the background. Anyway, the game is really fun and controls very well. Just like any other kart racer out there, there's weapons to pick up along the way. All of them are just a different form of what you'd find in Mario Kart. Instead of red shells, you get a red missile. Instead of lightning, you get an electric battery. To make the game feel just slightly different from Mario Kart, there's a few different things you can do. Like after winning a circuit of races, you need to get a better license. You do this by completing racing tasks like beating a track in under a certain time or winning a race against an opponent. You can also buy items in a shop to upgrade your kart and weapons. During a race, you'll collect coins that you'll use to purchase these upgrades. It all works well and helps separate it a little bit from the game it's mostly trying to copy. If you like Mario Kart on the Game Boy Advance, then you'll definitely like Crazy Racers. Get it if you see it for a good price.
Let's look at Crash Nitro Kart for the original Xbox. It's also available for the PS2, GameCube, as well as some portable systems, but the Xbox version is the one to have. It plays a lot like Diddy Kong Racing. There's an adventure mode with a hub world. You can freely roam this area finding races to participate in. If you win them, you get a trophy. Certain races require a number of previously obtained trophies to enter. Each area also has a boss race that you need to win as well. Winning that race gives you the key to unlock the next area. So yeah, it's pretty cut and dry that this game was inspired by Diddy Kong Racing. But that's okay, because it's fun. The controls are great and the track design is awesome. You can earn boost by pressing the hop button and landing at an angle. There's also a few items and weapons to get, but none of them are tremendously inventive. There's plenty of boost pads located along each track to help give you the upper hand as well. It even features some of the anti-gravity aspects from F-Zero X and Mario Kart 8. Look at how the wheels turn in anti-gravity mode. This game totally ripped off Mario Kart 8. Nintendo should go back in time and sue. The graphics are all really amazing for their time. It runs in 720p widescreen and the colors are extremely bold. The PS2 and GameCube versions are both 480i only and not even in widescreen, so like I said, this is the version you want. It even looks better than Mario Kart on the Wii, at least technically. Unfortunately, the same cannot be said about the music, as it's mostly just there and nothing really stands out at all. The characters in the Crash universe don't really have a lot of personality either, just like Dave and myself. So is it as good as Diddy Kong Racing? Well, no, but it's still pretty fun with lots of great courses to race on. Give this one a try if you still have a functioning Xbox or an Xbox 360. The US version is backwards compatible.
Okay, there we have it. A ton of racing games. Nintendo set the bar really high right off the bat, and Sega was one of the only companies that really were able to match it, I think.
So what is your favorite kart racing game ever?
Ever, and not series, but...
Yeah, just a single game.
I would have to say Super Mario Kart on the SNES.
Really?
Yes.
The original one
The
that started
original
it all.
Mario Kart, or maybe even Super Mario Kart Super Circuit for the Game Boy Advance. I really like those two games quite a bit.
Cool.
What about you?
Weren't you listening? I told you Sonic and Sega All-Stars, the first one.
Well, yeah, all right, whatever. No, I wasn't listening, but what was it again?
Anyway, what's your guys' favorite kart racing games? Let us know about some we didn't include, so we can include them next time if we cover this topic again. And thank you for watching Game Set. Are you ready to get your ass handed to you in this NES game?
No, because I've got the advantage.
Aw, man, you always have the advantage. What the hell's up with that? I'm always at a disadvantage.
Shut up, dude. All right, if you promise to stop whining, I'll let you have the advantage.
Yeah. Ew! What the hell?
What is that?
It's your stick. You should know.
No, 8-Bit Eric just sent that to me. You don't think he...
Ew!